So, one of the weird things about your relationship with your therapist, and something that actually causes some patients confusion, is when and how to fire your therapist because the therapy relationship is really special and it shares characteristics of relationships we have in our lives that we do want to end and ones that we don't want to end. So, stay tuned. I'm going to talk about this. Welcome to Wellness with John. I'm John Peters, and these are resources to help you thrive. So, this video is part of a series that I am making about things that are good to know to be well informed and well positioned to have a good relationship with your therapist and achieve your therapeutic goals. If you want to go back and start at the first video in this series, I'll put a link up here at the top. But you can watch them in any order that you want. So it's okay to proceed with this one and then go back later and watch the rest of them. But in this video, I want to talk a little bit about firing your therapist because I have noticed I've been in practice for over 25 years now, and I've worked with thousands and thousands of patients. And I've noticed that when it comes to negotiating the end of the relationship, it is typically more confusing for people than it is negotiating the beginning of the relationship, because the beginning of the beginning of the therapeutic relationship is pretty straightforward. You make an appointment, you have your first meeting, you start to talk about what's important to you, you start to define a process to achieve goals around the things that you want to change. That part makes a lot of sense, and you can just put one foot in front of the other and it's all going to be fine. Okay. But the thing is, your goal is to fire me. If you're hiring me as a therapist, I am not here to be a fixture of your life, right? Now, there's some older models of therapy, and I'll talk about those in a second, that kind of leave things super open-ended. But in general, people like me, we are results oriented, we are goal oriented, and we tend to be thinking about when am I not necessary, right? And I have just noticed that a lot of patients are reluctant to confront the end of the therapeutic relationship for multiple reasons. And we therapists often actually are the ones who guide that, which is okay. But I'm making this video just to alleviate you of a little bit of confusion that you might have in a relationship with a therapist, and to say totally okay to fire them, right? So, first off, let me say that when I talk about firing your therapist, I'm really referring to the end of the process of meeting your therapeutic goals. Now, there is another situation where you fire your therapist, which is absolutely okay. And that is if you connect with a therapist and then it turns out you don't like them, you don't click with them, or it doesn't seem like what they're offering is going to help you, or maybe they suck, right? Um, if that's the case, then fire that person, right? If you don't click with me as the patient, and I'm not, vibing with what you want, fire me. But in that case, you don't want to bail on the therapeutic process altogether if you have, substantive needs to get therapeutic support. So fire that therapist and then go get another one that you're going to fit with better and is going to be more supportive of you, right? But if you are working with someone that does work for you, right, and you are proceeding toward your therapeutic goals, the question comes up, when do we end this, right? And I think for a lot of patients, this is a bit nebulous, and it's partly an artifact of history because when psychoanalytic theories were dominant, so Sigmund Freud and psychodynamics, right? That was really the dominant model for therapy for many, many decades in the early part of psychology and formal therapy in the West. And part of the problem with that is that psychoanalysis had to, dig into your deep past and sort out all your inner workings of your relationships and everything. And that process was expected literally to take 20 to 30 years. Okay. So that's formal psychoanalytic therapy, right? And then there's this other model that's also still influential in psychology, which is just if we get together as patient and therapist. We form this alliance. We have this kind of buddy relationship, and we meet regularly, and good things just spontaneously come out of that type of relationship, regardless of what the technical things are that we might be doing to address specific issues. I don't 100% poo-poo that idea. What I do tend to reject is therapists who only operate in that mode, right? So if therapists only see themselves as this supportive buddy, I don't think that that's the only mode that therapists ought to be in. That's just my take. You can differ on that. Other therapists don't all agree with me on that. But personally, I think that as a therapist, I have a responsibility to really only be involved in your life as much as I need to be and you want me to be, and for us to meaningfully focus on specific things that you can do to achieve your therapeutic goals, and for us to, in part, evaluate whether or not you're making that progress or have achieved those goals. And when you have, stop working together, right? So that's my model for the overall trajectory of the therapeutic relationship. So because of the psychoanalytic thing of super long-term therapy, and because of like the nebulous let's be buddies and not know how to end it, because that those things are very dominant in psychology even today, it leaves patients just thinking, okay, I can get into this, but there's no clearly defined end, right? Like the Eagles song Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave, right? How do you know when you can leave and when you should leave? And I think patients end up in that kind of nebulous state, especially with a therapist who's not going to at least implicitly point toward the end of the process. And also, of course, you might actually like the therapist. You might like the process. You might feel that alliance. And because you're in a relationship with someone who is, getting into your extremely personal life, the things that matter most to you, right? There's a natural tendency that we have to attach to those people, right? And so it may feel awkward and even wrong to confront that attachment and say, I'm going to end this, right? Because I talked in the first video in this series about how the therapist occupies a really special place in the range of types of relationships that we have in our life. And part of what that means is that therapists share qualities of relationships with people that you definitely want to end your relationship with, like hiring a plumber or an electrician, and the job is done, so you get rid of the technician that you hired, right? But therapists also share qualities of people that we don't tend to want to get rid of: friends, members of the clergy, just supportive, good people in our lives. We don't tend to think, oh, I'm going to get rid of this friend after their expiration date runs out. We don't think about friends that way. We don't think about, if you're religious and you have a member of the clergy you relate to, you don't think, okay, there's a certain date where they're no longer useful to me and I'm going to abandon them, right? So you end up in a weird place with the therapist because the nature of the relationship basically makes it end up not making sense to end it because of how it feels, because of your stance toward the therapist, regardless of what's going on in terms of the process and the goals. But all of that said, really, your relationship with your therapist is going to end. And one way to think about when to end it, or when to think about when it should end, is, am I meeting my goals? And can I do fine with less of the therapist involved in my life, right? Now, that's going to mean different things for different people. There are some people who come to therapy and literally in one session, they're satisfied with whatever they got and they're just not going to go back, right? But there are people who come to us therapists and because of what they're unpacking and sorting through and reworking, it takes months. For some people, it does take years. And so there's not a cookie cutter approach with a clearly defined program that says, okay, you do session number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, pop, you're done, right? There are some psychoeducational courses of therapy that kind of work that way because there's very specific programmed content. I do this a little bit when I have worked with divorcing parents, which is a niche that I work in. And I do this also when I work with people around preparing for the end of life kind of issues. There's certain content we move through and we kind of got through that and we're done. And unless something new has popped up, we're going to just finish the sequence of specific sessions that we had together. But most therapy doesn't work that way. Most therapy is actually, let's explore in a very open, broad way, in a deep way, things that matter, and new things pop up and new angles from which to examine it pop up, and new situations in life happen during the therapy process that can be appropriately addressed with the therapy. So, you can't know from the onset exactly how long you're going to need to be there, but you can know once you get into it when it's starting to be time to think about reducing the frequency of the sessions toward eventually hitting the pause button or a final kind of goodbye end. And I'm going to make another video in this series, by the way, about kind of how to think about doing the final session when you are going to formally decide to end your relationship with your therapist. But just in terms of knowing about the ending and about it being okay, it is okay to hit the pause button. It is okay to end it. And it's probably going to feel awkward, and that's just natural. But that's just because, mostly because, as I've said, the therapist occupies this special space in terms of type of relationship. And it's not one that most people naturally feel like they know when to end it, right? Some people just kind of default by using their lack of will of showing up at meetings, and then they feel shame about having missed so many, and then they just never show up again. Kind of, that's actually a way that it often happens, and I'll address that in that other video when I talk about how to do the formal end of therapy. But basically, the point of this video is it's okay to end the relationship. The therapy relationship is really destined to end from the beginning, and if that feels awkward, that's just the way that it goes because of the nature of the relationship. So if you have confusion over it, the best thing to do is bring up the topic with your therapist. Just say to the therapist, look, how will we know when to end this? How will you think that we should end this? Or what types of things would let us know that it's time to end? Those types of questions are actually really good to put out on the table and discuss openly and negotiate with your therapist, so that you're both clear about it and there's not confusion and you don't have any shame or doubt about when to do that, right? So if you like this kind of video, please hit the like button below. And if you have yet to subscribe to the channel, I invite you to subscribe because I'm trying to grow the channel. And before I end, I just want to tell you about a course that I have. If you're interested in reducing your stress, I have a 2-week course that teaches easy to learn, easy to practice techniques that take minutes today, produce quick results, produce lasting results. And so I'll put a link down in the description if you want to go check that out. I'll also put a link down in the description of a free webinar that you can sign up for that just explains more about how I got to crafting that course and the type of content that you'll learn in it, totally free. But the other good thing about the course is if you do sign up with the course, I'm so confident that it works because I've actually taught those techniques to several thousand patients at this point, that if you take the course and you find that within a couple of weeks it's not lowering your stress, just send me a message. I'll refund 100% of your money. So no questions asked. Absolutely 100% guaranteed, right? So check out the links in the description below and stay tuned on this channel because I am going to make more videos in this series, and I make videos on a wide variety of topics related to therapy and wellness. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.